Good morning and happy Tuesday. I'm Dan Ahlstrand in for Todd again this morning. Hope you had a fantastic weekend and managed to get out and enjoy some of the beautiful things that we have in store here in Nova Scotia. It was a fabulous weekend weather-wise. And can you believe it? That we're already in October? It seems like it was just May, wasn't it? And now the leaves are turning and it's getting cooler at night, although you can't complain about the temperatures we had this weekend. Holy smokes, we had 18, 19, 20 degrees, a little bit of rain, but the sun came out, and I hope that you took advantage of it. Looks like it's going to be a great week weather-wise, too. So if you haven't had a chance, I was chatting with somebody in the newsroom just before I came on the air and went to the beach this weekend, right? Last weekend of September at the beach, people swimming in the water. It's weird, to say the least. Anyway, October is upon us, and that means a new month, and that means that we're that 1 month closer to when the white stuff flies, and we won't talk about that, will we? Just a quick update on Todd this morning. I texted Todd over the weekend, and he is well and now recovering. He's home from the hospital and got home in time on the weekend to watch his Jets lose on the weekend. So things are back to normal for him, I guess. I wanted to send a shout out to Todd and to Kelly this morning. I know he wants to get back into the chair here and back chatting with y'all. So we all get joined together and wish him a speedy recovery as he gets closer. It won't be long now. What's going on in the world today? I know Todd and all you baseball fans out there, it's like Christmas with the Major League Baseball playoffs getting underway. And Blue Jays fans, it's time to think about next year and how we can fix all the problems that we had. But for those of you who are baseball purists or baseball fans of another team, this is the greatest time of the year. We have like 3 games a day, and we get into the wild cards and into the division series and the championship. It's there's baseball every day, and it's playoff baseball, and it's fun to watch. So I know many of you will be watching that. And how about the Halifax Mooseheads, right? I know it's early, but there was a lot of talk prior to the season that this was going to be a challenging year for a young herd team. But they, to this point, have silenced most of their critics. They went 4-1 on their 5-game road trip to start the season. That's awesome. And don't forget that their home opener goes Friday night. So I think that we should all get down to Scotiabank Centre and welcome home the Mooseheads. That's a heck of a way to start a season, as 5 games on the road. So let's light up the Scotiabank Centre and show that the team our love and that we're looking forward to a fantastic season. But man, 4-1, I don't think there's anybody that will be upset with that start to the season, especially with a 5-game road to start. A tip of the hat this morning to those Nova Scotia Power crews that are on their way down to North Carolina. They're there to help with the restoration work in the wake of Hurricane Helene. Now, the death toll from that storm, I think it's a 133, and that number is expected to climb. And if you saw any of the pictures from Florida or from the Carolinas on the weekend, it's just absolutely heartbreaking. And I know that we are sending our thoughts down to our friends south of the border that have been hit by this just absolutely devastating storm. And Oasis fans, I know Vanessa's excited, rejoice! The Gallagher brothers are coming to Canada in August of next year. If they don't fall out again, we'll see. Vegas is taking money on that, by the way, if you haven't noticed. There's actually a book that's taking odds on if this tour is going to go off or not before Liam and Noel Gallagher actually beat up each other before it starts. Anyway, that's Toronto in August of next year at the new Rogers Stadium that they're building at the Downsview at the old airport. It's going to be a fantastic facility. If you haven't seen the pictures, looks like it's going to be awesome. And if you're an Oasis fan, I'm not necessarily an Oasis fan, but if you are, it will be one of those shows you don't want to miss. Special thank you to Vanessa Vandenez, who's on the other side of the glass this morning, and as always is doing a fantastic job keeping things organized here. It is Tuesday, so that means Rob Thacker will be here for Science Files in hour number 3. And our first open hour of the week will happen just after 11 o'clock today. So if something you saw on the weekend caught your eye, a couple of things that kind of got under my bonnet this weekend, and we'll talk about those when we get closer to the open hour. But this is going to be your opportunity chat about whatever it is you want to talk about, and we'll do that just after 11 o'clock. And this half hour, before we get to our first guest, I know I'm talking a long time, but there's lots to talk about here. Before we get to our first guest, we have a brand new segment that we're going to debut today. And pharmacists in Nova Scotia, they provide just an absolute vital service to our healthcare sector. They do more, though, than just dispense those medications. They are responsible for a whole bunch of different things. So there's a lot of, I don't know if misinformation is the right term, or if it's maybe just not knowing. And number one rule of radio, Dan, is that you should turn your phone off before you come on the radio. Anyway, Vanessa's mad at me. See there, I made it 6 minutes in, and before she got mad at me. Anyway, pharmacists do a fantastic job, but they do a whole lot more than just handle medications, and those sort of duties have changed over the last little while. So Vanessa and I were talking about it with PANS, the Physicians Association of Nova Scotia, to see if it might be a good idea to bring a pharmacist on to answer your questions. So we're going to do that today after 10:30. We'll have a pharmacist on the show, and we'll be here. The lines will open, and you can ask questions, be it about medications, be it about the other services that pharmacists provide. I think it's going to be educational, and I'm looking forward to it. But first, and now I'm going to be done talking for a while, we've been taking calls and talking about what shopkeepers in HRM have been noting as what they're considering a rise in theft, and some often brazen theft from stores. Please welcome to the show for a return engagement into the studio. He's going to be here more than me most days. And it's Halifax Regional Police spokesperson, Constable Martin Cromwell. Constable Cromwell, welcome back.
Thank you.
I guess the first question is, are shopkeepers correct? Are we seeing, or is it your experience or HRP's experience, that we're seeing more theft and shoplifting than we have seen in the past?
Well, I mean, obviously there's an increase in population. And with an increase in population, there's going to be an increase in a lot of things in the city, one of them being thefts. I don't have any specific data to spout off to you today. But what I can say is we're constantly working, meeting with the Halifax Spring Garden Road and downtown business associations to try to come up with strategies and to keep the public safe, to prevent, to enhance crime prevention. So that is one of our focuses.
I'm hearing from store owners, you mentioned Spring Garden Road, and
yes.
I take calls from some shopkeepers on Spring Garden Road that say that this is happening more frequently to them, and it's a scary situation. Particularly with some incidences where the perpetrator, the person that's stealing things, is just kind of being very brazen about it. Just kind of walking in, looking at the shop owner, laughing at them, and then walking out the door. What is HRP's response to that? What if we call police? What do you guys do when we get a call like that?
Well, again, whenever we respond to a call, we obviously look at the details provided to us, and we'll respond to a call in a priority manner. If there's a theft in progress, we'll have an officer respond as promptly as possible. Same as if there's an injured party, we'll have an officer respond as prompt as possible. If we have to clear from another call, then that's what we'll do. But again, there's different levels, I guess, to reporting. Again, our divisional commander, our management team, is regularly meeting with the Spring Garden Road and downtown business associations to, again, create strategies to enhance and streamline reporting. So that's always discussed during those meetings.
Is an officer dispatched to every complaint? Like if somebody comes into their store, takes a widget and walks out, and they call police and report it, does an officer respond to each one of those calls?
We do reply / respond. An officer, if it's not in progress, again, if an incident is not in progress, well, then it may get an officer may respond shortly after, depending on what else is going on in the city at that point in time. But if somebody is reporting a crime, an officer will be in contact with that business or that person.
Now, I don't know if you can answer this next question,
Yeah.
Martin, because it comes from, it's sort of a policy thing, but I'm hearing from people again on Spring Garden Road that officers are being instructed not to respond to these calls because of because prosecuting these offenses is difficult once it gets to court. Is that in fact the case?
Okay, I can't speak to that.
Sure.
I have no knowledge of that. But what I can tell you is, again, this summer we've implemented bike patrols. So there's uniformed officers on bicycles in the downtown core. So that is to make us more visible and to allow people to, again, see us, and that will allow them another avenue to report an incident. So we are there to tackle those situations, and again, we're trying to make ourselves more visible, more approachable. We also have our community response officers who track prolific offenders and any ongoing issues, and then again try to create new strategies to combat those.
When the decision is made to put those bike patrols into different areas, how does that decision fall out? Is it based on complaints? Is it based on stats? I mean, which neighborhoods get picked for these bike patrols or this increased police presence?
Again, it's everything stemming from our management team, our officers, our patrol officers meeting with the businesses on a regular basis, discussing these strategies. When I first became a police officer, my initial job, I guess, was Spring Garden Road Beat. And again, on a regular basis, we would meet with the business owners and discuss what issues they're dealing with. And then I would take that back to my supervisor, bring it up the chain, and again strategize on how to combat those issues.
So the bike patrols replace the foot patrols that we've seen in the past?
No, they're in addition to.
Okay.
There's going to be patrol officers in marked vehicles. On different days, there's going to be patrol officers on foot. Again, beat patrol. In the summer, we're going to have the bike patrol. Again, there's not going to be a bike patrol in the winter, obviously, but the bike patrol will allow officers to again be visible and to get to those calls a little bit faster.
Martin, if there are business owners that are listening to us today, because I'll almost guarantee you that there are, that are frustrated with some of the response that they've seen, is there a mechanism? Is there a way that they can raise that concern with HRP?
Again, I keep circling back to our management team. Our central divisional commander regularly meets with the Spring Garden Road and downtown business associations and commission. And that's one main avenue that those issues can be brought to the department.
Constable Martin Cromwell is the HRP information officer. Constable Cromwell, is there something, or are there solutions for business owners to help combat this? Is there something they can do at the store level to try and curb this type of shoplifting?
Again, we encourage the businesses to continue to report. Obviously, we want to encourage them to keep their staff safe. That is a priority. We wouldn't want to suggest that their staff do anything to intervene during a theft. That's our role. That's our job to do that. So, again, we just encourage all business owners to continue to report these thefts to us.
Do closed circuit cameras in stores help with the investigation end of things? Like, if we put cameras up, do police use that as part of their investigation of these crimes? Absolutely.
Any video surveillance, that can be used in an investigation is always an added bonus, so to speak.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
You get pictures of things that are going on.
Yeah. Additional better lighting. If there's if possible, depending on where the store is located. Try to reduce any type of hiding spots for people looking to do harm, to do property damage, to steal, etc. Lines of sight in the stores, outside of the stores. But again, as you mentioned, cameras are a big one.
And I'm seeing a number of stores having to resort to hiring private security as a deterrent more than anything else. Has that been your experience?
Yes. Me, myself, just on a day-to-day basis, I am seeing a lot of security in stores. And again, that's a decision on the stores. But again, I believe that would be something that's discussed during our management's meetings with the associations.
Constable Cromwell, another sort of area that has been identified on the show, people calling in, and that's the NSLC. Mm-hmm. And I'm, for lack of a better term, I'm going to call it a racket, where people are going into the store and removing bottles and taking them out and then selling them, and then that person bringing them back and returning them for a deposit. Is that something that you've heard of from HRP? And is that how do we fight that?
I can't speak about that exact practice, but again, I mentioned earlier, our community response officers are involved in tracking the prolific offenders, and they're dealing with those ongoing issues, and are always looking for ways to combat those. And if they, throughout their investigations, they determine that type of activity is going on, well, then they'll take action and again strategize with the NSLCs and their management to help combat that. And
one other thing, just before we're almost out of time, goes quick, doesn't it? We've seen an uptick in bicycle theft as of late, and particularly e-bikes. Is that something that's been identified by HRP as a problem area, and what, if anything, can you do to help prevent that?
Yeah, bike theft, e-scooters, those type of things. There is that is a main issue, and we're definitely focusing on that as well. What I can say is make sure you lock your e-scooters, your bikes, get a proper lock. Nowadays, obviously, not just any lock will do. I would encourage you to spend the extra couple dollars and get the high quality security for your property.
And if it's stolen, it's important to report it, correct?
Absolutely. Try to remember when you first purchased these scooters and e-bikes and bicycles.
They're valuable, right? There's thousands of dollars in those.
Oh, absolutely. The mountain bikes are ranging from $500 to $5,000. But make sure you log the serial numbers, make, model, take a photocopy of the receipt, stash that somewhere. If you can, register it online, register it with the store that you purchased it from. Just have some type of documentation so that we could refer to if and when that item is stolen.
And last question, Constable. You guys obviously recover bikes quite frequently and don't know who the owners are. Is there a way somebody can take a look to see what you have and if it's theirs and can reunite themselves with their property?
Definitely. That's, again, currently what we're doing, as you're aware, with all the recent bike thefts and recoveries. They can call the department. They can call our property room. And again, if they do have their make, model, serial number, any type of documentation, it'll make it a little bit easier for us to search our database and reunite that item with the owner.
So you can go down and get it once. You obviously have to prove it's yours.
Absolutely, yes.
Right.
Yeah, if somebody reports their bike stolen, we can look into that and determine if we have that, and then absolutely we can get that property back to them.
Constable Cromwell, I appreciate your time. Have a good one.
Thank you very much.
That is Constable Martin Cromwell. He's HRP spokesperson. Need to stop down, take a break. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We are back in minutes. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Hope you're having a fantastic Tuesday morning. I think I jinxed it. I was talking about the bright sunshine and how lovely a week we're having, and then I look out the window during the break and the sky's clouded over and it looks kind of gloomy. But whatever. It's not raining and it's October and it's still warm and it's still a wonderful time of the year, isn't it? Still to come, I mentioned it off the top, and I'd like to mention it again so that you can perhaps get your questions formulated in your minds. We're going to debut a new segment here on the program coming up after the news at the bottom of the hour. This is going to be an opportunity to speak directly with a pharmacist. Now, as I mentioned earlier, pharmacists do a lot more in our province than just fill those prescriptions that you can't read from your doctor, right? They're the ones that dispense the pills. They also provide you with information, but they can also do a whole bunch of different other things. And I'm looking forward to this because it's going to be, I think, an educational segment that we're going to do here. And if you have some questions about what pharmacists do, maybe about your medications and those kind of things, this will be your opportunity. We're going to throw those telephone lines open right after the news at 10:30. And welcome our pharmacist in. We're going to do this once a month, I think, and we're going to try and see how it goes. And I hope that you participate because I think it's valuable because, again, there's a lot of things that pharmacists can do nowadays that they couldn't just a few years ago. And services that I think the Premier talked about it when he said that there was somebody he was speaking to about an experience at an emergency room. I think it was the IWK, and they ended up having a great experience at the IWK, getting through very quickly through the emergency room, which is rare anyway. And the Premier said that he could have done that much faster if he would have gone to the pharmacist because whatever the ailment was, I think it was strep throat, can be handled at the pharmacy level. So I don't know what all the rules are because of all the changes. And I know many of you have questions, so we're going to open up the telephone lines here at the bottom of the hour. And we're going to do that, see how it goes kind of thing. I'm looking forward to it. I mentioned before the break that we have some Nova Scotians that are on their way down south to give a helping hand as we do here at the Blue Noser Spirit. And there's 300 of them from Atlantic Canada that are going to North and South Carolina. They're going to help to put the lights back on after that area got lashed by Hurricane Helene. Crews from Nova Scotia, PEI, New Brunswick, along with some from Ontario and Quebec are already there. But apparently the conditions down in, if you've seen the pictures, it's insane. It's crazy how powerful that storm was in that storm surge. The flooding that's going on, there's still roads that are flooded and there's lines across the roads and stuff. Apparently they're already working 16-hour days. So just wanted to again recognize their efforts for what they're doing down there and wish them the best and wish that all the people in the southern United States that have been impacted by that storm will soon be able to get their lights back on and try and pick up the pieces. It's not one of these storms, I think, that we're going to talk about for a couple days and then it's going to go away. I think that this one's going to be a lasting storm, and I think that this one's going to be with us for some time, just based on some of the pictures of the damage that I've already seen. We're going to stop and take the break for the news. Again, when we come back, a brand new segment on the Todd Veinotte Show. The lines are open, 902-405-6000. It's an opportunity to speak directly with a pharmacist. Ask the Pharmacist is next. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Olstrand. We are back in minutes. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. Dan Olstrand along with you. A brand new segment here on the program. We're really excited about it, and we're very pleased to welcome to the program to tell us a little bit about herself and to help us out this half hour is Pam Kennedy, pharmacist and owner. Pam, welcome to the program.
Hey, Dan. Thank you so much.
Oh, no, I'm very excited about this segment. I guess let's begin with my question. Pharmacists have a much more wide-ranging role than just dispensing medications these days. Am I correct?
You're very correct. Yes. Yeah. We've seen an incredible shift in what pharmacists are currently now being funded and what we're able to do in Nova Scotia. So yeah, it's been an amazing year and a half or 2 years as we've seen this transition outside of just the dispensary role that we currently play.
So if you have a question for Pam, she'll do her very best to answer it. The telephone number is 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000 if you have a question to ask maybe about a medication or about some of the services that you can get at the pharmacy. This is your opportunity. Again, 902-405-6000. Pam, I think I mentioned it before the break. I was having a conversation with Premier Houston a couple of weeks ago, and he said that there are some services that you can avoid the ER and hit the pharmacy, and I do believe that. And correct me if I'm wrong. I think he said something to do with strep throat was something that you can handle at the pharmacy level. Am I right?
Yeah, correct. So we've seen, and probably one of the highest uptakes in the services that we're providing within the community pharmacy primary care clinics is strep throat assessments. So within our clinics, we've actually already provided more than 190,000 services since the clinics were started in February of last year. Strep has certainly been one that we've seen. And if you remember, actually fairly recently, they talked about some of the stats that were coming out, and there was more than a 9% reduction in less urgent ER visits that will, have definitely directly been attributed to the fact that we've been able to provide that strep throat assessment within these clinics.
So how does that work? Does somebody just come in and walk up to the counter and say, "Hi, Pam, I think I have strep throat. Can you take a look?"
Yeah. So all of the clinics that are in operation, and we're up to 45 clinics by the end of October of this year. So all of the clinics do run on an appointment based. So we do ask that you do contact the clinics to set up an appointment. I will say that the clinics do offer same day appointments. So typically for something more urgent like a strep throat assessment, that would be something that we can work into the clinic very quickly.
902-405-6000 is the number. We'll head to the phones and welcome Joanne to the show. Joanne, how are you?
Oh, very good. My question is, I know the pharmacies do a lot of point-of-care testing on devices, and, the expanding point-of-care testing area, like A1Cs, cholesterol, INRs, and, of course, the glucoses. And I just want to know if the pharmacies are enrolled in an accredited proficiency testing program and other quality assurance controls. It's like the clinical labs would have.
Hi, Jen. Yeah, thank you so much for that question, actually. So yes, of course, under our regulations of the college here in Nova Scotia, all pharmacists would have to, declare that they have the proficiency to provide that service through point-of-care testing. So point-of-care testing currently available in the clinics, as you mentioned, include A1C, lipids, including cholesterol, INRs for those patients that are taking warfarin, or glucose. And as part of the standards that we are required to meet, continuous quality assurance is obviously top of mind. And we do all present with, point-of-care testing standards that we do have to follow in order to ensure that those tests are being done properly.
And another little question, is there a cost to the patient to get these tests?
Correct. So no, within the clinics, there is no cost for point-of-care testing. So we use those to guide some of the work that we're doing through chronic disease management of conditions like diabetes or cardiovascular disease, and there is no charge for that service.
And not all the pharmacies do these, right?
Correct. So the INR that you mentioned, and certainly blood glucose testing are two that would be, outside of the clinic setting as well as within the clinic setting. But the A1C and lipid cholesterol testing are done, covered through your MSI card as part of the new community pharmacy primary care clinics.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joanne. I appreciate the call.
Yeah, bye-bye.
902-405-6000. It's that easy to get those questions answered. If you have a question about what the pharmacy can provide these days, because it's changing and it seems to be changing quite regularly. Or maybe you have a question about some of the stuff that they've been doing all along. This is your chance to get those questions answered. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Pam, it might behoove everyone to maybe dig a little bit deeper into the background of a pharmacist. Tell me a little bit about how you become one.
Yeah, so the pharmacy programs currently is a little bit different than when I would have graduated. So it was a Bachelor of Science degree in pharmacy, which is a 4-year program. There are a number of schools across Canada. Dalhousie and Memorial University would be our two closest here. So a 4-year program, you would require, there are prerequisite courses that are required to enter pharmacy. So those prerequisites can be attained within a 1-year program. I had a full nutrition, Bachelor of Science in Nutrition prior to, and there are a number of people that do enter pharmacy after a full first degree. But yeah, 1 year is a minimum. Now the program at Dalhousie is actually a PharmD program. So it's a little bit different than the bachelor program that we went through, and we're seeing some of those new pharmacists graduating. So this was the first year that our PharmD, so doctor of pharmacy students graduated.
So it's quite an involved process, and you obviously are educated on a lot of different procedures.
Of course, yes. Yes, the knowledge set has certainly been there for a very long time. It's just been a slow uptake, in getting those regulations changed and getting funding approved, working within our colleges and within our associations and with government to really showcase what pharmacists are able to do. So it's certainly not new, the knowledge front. These are things that we have been able to do for a very long time. It's just seeing them integrated into regular health care provision within our communities, which is so exciting to see.
So you've had the knowledge all along. You just didn't have the regulation to back it up.
Correct. Yeah. Well, the regulations were there, and certainly we were doing a lot of these services. But at that point, we were having to ask patients for payment, which wasn't ideal. Obviously, it's not something that you want to do as a healthcare professional, and so. Seeing the government now see that benefit and provide the funding has certainly been a real win.
Let's go back to the phone lines. The telephone number is 902-405-6000, and we welcome Gary to the program. Gary, how are you?
Hi. I want to find out, say you didn't have a doctor and you're on medication. Would they fill them up every month till you get a doctor?
Yes. So, Gary, just to confirm, are you saying you're without a family doctor at this point?
Yes.
Okay, correct. Yes. And regardless whether you have a family doctor or nurse practitioner or not, prescription renewals are a service that is available at all community pharmacies across Nova Scotia. So that is not limited to pharmacies within these primary care clinics. However, to support the prescription renewals, if you're due for blood work at this point, or reordering of labs or your blood work can only be done within the primary care clinics. And so I would suggest reaching out if you know that you're due for labs. Otherwise, speak with your regular pharmacist. But yes, regular prescription renewals are something that we're able to do. And it doesn't need to be monthly. It depends, of course, on the medication, but those can be provided on an ongoing basis.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
You're welcome.
902-405-6000 is the number. We need to stop and take our first break. This segment is Ask the Pharmacist, and it continues on the other side. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Olstrand. We're back in minutes.
Axe.
Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Olstrand. The segment is Ask the Pharmacist. If you've had many questions that you've been wondering about pharmacy and what pharmacists can do with all the rule changes over the last 18 months, this is your chance to get those questions answered. Maybe you have a question about some of the services they provide, or maybe you have a question about some of the services that you've been using for many years, about prescription refills and renewals and interactions and those kind of things. Pam Kennedy is a pharmacist, and she's on the line with us today. We appreciate her time. Pam, we're going to go back to the phone lines and welcome Diane to the show. Diane, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good. Your question, please.
Good. I'm just wondering, Pam, if you can just talk a little bit about getting prescriptions, because I know, like, in the past few years, it's been taking a little bit longer to kind of to get a prescription, and I guess there's more to it than just kind of putting the pills in the bottle. But I'm just wondering if you could kind of explain why sometimes getting a prescription takes like 10 minutes, sometimes it can take up to like 48 hours. If you could just talk about that.
Sure, of course. Yeah, so it certainly depends on, on the pharmacy. So as a general rule, we do recommend allowing up to 48 hours for prescription refills. This is a sort of blanket statement. And the reason that we do that, I mean, obviously right now, like in pretty much every other sector, we are, and other healthcare professionals, there is a shortage currently of pharmacists, pharmacy assistants, and pharmacy technicians. And so we are, working through fewer staff in the dispensary. And so having that extra time is certainly a benefit. But of course, behind the dispensary, there's a lot that goes on to preparing a medication. Of course, you've got your clinical verification by your pharmacist, and so that pharmacist is ensuring that the medication that's been prescribed for you is the best medication, most appropriate, that it's not going to present any undue risk or harm through drug interactions or other issues that they may find. And of course, the preparation of the product as it gets entered into our pharmacy software system and prepared by our assistants and technicians. So there is a lot that goes on behind the counter, but it's really just ensuring that medication is the safest, most appropriate medication for you.
Okay, and maybe drug shortages have something to do with it too.
Certainly, drug shortages have been, yes, there's been a lot over the last number of years related to that. So when that prescription comes in, that can certainly result in a delay in the preparation of your prescription. So when drug shortages occur, the pharmacy team, and your pharmacist does then have to try to determine if they can find them, a suitable alternative for you. Sometimes we're able to do that without involving, the original prescriber. Sometimes we do have to contact that original prescriber. Generally, we try not to have to do that, but certainly that can take some time to try to find the best option available for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Diane. 902-405-6000 is the number, 902-405-6000. Pam, this next topic is something that's very near and dear to me because I'm in the woods all the time. And that is these evil little things called ticks that are a scourge on society, in my opinion. But if I think that I've been bitten by a tick, can I come to the pharmacy and what can you do for me?
Yes, of course. So again, this is a service that is available at all pharmacies across Nova Scotia, so not just limited to those primary care clinics. So if you have been bit by a tick, you do want to contact your closest pharmacy, and they can. So there's a couple of different things that pharmacists are now able to do. So number one, depending on when the tick bite occurred, how long it may have been attached for when it was found, then they can do an assessment and in some cases actually provide an antibiotic dose that may reduce that risk of it progressing to Lyme. However, we can now also prescribe for early stages of Lyme disease as well. So there are, certainly a couple of different options available there now. So if you've been bitten by a tick, ideally, if you can hang on to that tick, that's great. If you're in the woods a lot like Dan and can recognize that black-legged tick from other types of ticks, the black-legged tick is the one that does carry Lyme, and so if you know and can be assured that's what it was, then that's great. If not, and you need that verification, then we do recommend hanging on to that tick or taking some photographs of it so that can be used as part of the pharmacist assessment.
My experience with them is that sometimes it's very difficult to tell them because there's some of them are pretty small. So best just to if it should I come to the pharmacy if it's just crawled on me, or should I wait till or only come in if it's actually embedded itself into me?
Yeah, so with a tick bite, or if you're presenting with anything that would be similar to Lyme symptoms, and certainly you can if you think that you've been at risk of a tick bite. But yeah, I mean, typically if you see it on you and eventually you're not finding any signs or symptoms that may be related to a bite, you're probably safe not to go ahead with further assessment. But certainly if you've got that tick attached, then you do want to follow up with the pharmacy for sure.
What's the treatment? What's the treatment for early stages of Lyme disease? I'm curious.
Yeah, so we use an antibiotic called doxycycline. So doxycycline is the antibiotic of choice, and that's typically what we would use. And so that, depending on whether it's if you've had a bite and it doesn't look as though it's progressed to Lyme, then we just do 2 capsules as a single dose, and then we would, monitor. We would be educating patients on what to watch for as far as symptom progression in case that does progress to Lyme, and then we, in that case, prescribe the same medication but for a longer duration.
So it's not a needle or anything?
It is not, no.
Because needles scare me.
Like they do many. However, in this case, it's a pretty easy oral antibiotic that we can help you out with.
Speaking of needles, Pam, obviously pharmacies and pharmacists are responsible for a good chunk of the rollout of that now infamous flu vaccine and COVID shots. When are we, or are we already giving flu shots, and when should I get that?
Yeah, so flu shots and COVID shots will begin fairly quickly. So I expect the flu will be available possibly a little bit sooner than COVID, but we do hope that we'll be able to align most people to be able to have those vaccinations done together. And we should see those start by, I'm guessing here, but I would expect by mid to end of October. Booking is not open yet, but I expect that will be any time, and it'll be the same booking process. So there is a 1-800 number that you can call to book those appointments, and or you can book online as well, similar to previous years.
So you can get them together, correct?
Correct. Yes, they can be given at the same appointment, and we do hope to be able to align a lot of people that way, so that the one stop will get you both of your vaccinations for the fall.
And just to make my stomach queasy, is it 1 shot or 2?
No, yeah, I did read they were trialing. I think Pfizer was trialing the combination, but no. So right now, currently this year, we will be doing 2 separate. So flu and then COVID separate. There is an enhanced flu vaccine available for seniors 65 and up this year. So when you go online to register for that appointment, you'll automatically be booked into the appointments for an enhanced flu shot if you're over the age of 65.
Where can we find out when they're available, Pam? Is that going to be on a website somewhere, or?
Yes, I expect you'll see, obviously Nova Scotia Health or Department of Health and Wellness, I expect you'll see some, and of course, Pharmacy Association in Nova Scotia will have that information available as well on social media, so follow along there. But I expect we're going to see those booking lines open up within the next week or two.
902-405-6000 is the number. Tristan, welcome to the program.
Hi there. I just have a question about accessing information. My grandmother has one of these clinics opening up in her community, and she reached out wondering where she can find a list of services, like if there was a sheet that's sent out that she could pin up in her fridge or something like that.
Yes, of course. Yeah, so the services that are available at the primary care clinics, so the best place to go would be onto our Pharmacy Association site. So PANS, so Pharmacy Association Nova Scotia, their website is PANS, PANS.ns.ca, and then /CPPCC. So, or Google, Pharmacy Association of Nova Scotia, Community Pharmacy Clinics. You'll see within that site a full list of services that are available. Otherwise, I would tell that patient to reach out to their pharmacy that will be involved, and they'll be able to give them a full list of services that are available.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Tristan. And we're just about out of time, Pam. I appreciate you spending 30 minutes with us. We're going to do this once a month, so if you have a pharmacy-related question or you want to have a chat with a pharmacist, we'll do that again next month. Have a great week.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dan. It's been a pleasure.
That is Pam Kennedy. She's a pharmacist, and as I mentioned, we'll be here once a month to answer all of your questions. We need to stop down and take a break. Blake is going to update us on what's going on in the news, and when we come back, it's time for you. The telephone lines are now open. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. The open hour is next. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. It is time now for you. The lines are open, 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. It's the open hour. Chance to talk about whatever it is you want to talk about. A couple of things I mentioned off the top of the program today and some others. Don't forget, tonight is the vice presidential debate, right? This is the big showdown. We're going to call it Walz Vance 1. And I think it's a one and only. I don't think there's any other U.S. vice presidential debate scheduled until after the election. And after the election doesn't matter, does it? But are you going to tune in? Do you care? It just, and maybe it's me, and maybe it's because I've been focusing on a bunch of other things. But has the U.S. election kind of just slipped off your radar as of late? It feels like other world events that are happening have kind of displaced it. I mean, I get it that Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are campaigning every day and they're doing campaign stuff and Donald Trump putting out tweets like he always does and so on and so forth. But it just doesn't feel like it's at least, and maybe it's me, but it just doesn't feel to me like it's top of mind right now with me. Is it with you? Are you still following the U.S. election, and will you watch the debate tonight, the big vice presidential debate? And if you are going to watch the debate tonight, I'm curious as to what you're watching for. Are you watching for policy? Are you watching for promises? Are you watching for something that is going to change your world? Are you watching for it to become a sideshow? Are you watching for somebody to melt down or to have a massive flub? Canadians' interest in American politics today always has been very interesting to me, and I know that many Canadians are following this very closely, and I'm curious as to if you're going to watch this VP debate tonight. 902-405-6000. And before we take our first caller, just I've got something that a bee that buzzed up into my bonnet over the weekend. I know it's something I've talked about on the program before. I had the most wonderful opportunity to take a drive around HRM on the weekend on Saturday, and I was up into the Dartmouth Crossing area and then came across, I think it was Wright Avenue and Windmill, and then through up Magazine Hill, and then into Bedford because I had some business to do in Bedford, and love my opportunities to go to that beautiful community. But what I noticed was when I was heading down the Bedford Highway, coming back towards Halifax, towards the peninsula, the amount of election signs on the side of that highway is asinine. There's hundreds of them. And I know I've railed about municipal election signs before. Some will call them a necessary evil. But if things getting out of hand, there are so many of them and all piled together, because if somebody puts a sign here, then I got to put my sign right next to it. It looks awful. It looks awful. Are they a necessary evil? Does driving around going about your daily commute or going about your daily business, when you drive by elect so-and-so for so-and-so, does that sway your vote? Does it change your mind? Do you just drive around your neighborhood and see who's got the most signs and that's who you vote for? Because it must be part of the psychology behind this, because everywhere I go, I see all of these signs gathered together. I'm interested in your thoughts on election signs. 902-405-6000. Let's go to the phone lines and welcome Tony to the program. Tony, how are you?
You stole my thunder, Dan.
I'm
stole
sorry.
my thunder. No, you're all right. I do want to talk about the municipal election.
Sure.
Not any particular candidate, because I said I wouldn't do that. But, I too noticed something. There are 3 candidates for mayor who have seem to have gotten most of the interest of the public and of the press and TV. I find it interesting that candidate Fillmore has got, listen to this, he's got more signs, huge signs. He's gotten TV exposure, and he's got a YouTube site. That's a lot of money. I don't care what anybody says. That's a lot of money that's coming from somewhere to get that kind of exposure. Then you have a couple of town halls, or whatever they were. I don't think they were town halls. Those 3, the top 3 candidates spoke and provided feedback to the public, but the public was pretty limited in who got in to see that. And then they had another conference, or whatever the hell you want to call it. There were 5 candidates on stage. As an afterthought, it was said that the other candidates would be available online at some site, et cetera, et cetera. So that's all BS. That's all BS, Dan. Fillmore is the mayor of Halifax. That's it. It's done. It's over. Don't you had a guy call a couple of weeks ago and yelled at me because I said vote, vote, vote. Well, in a mayoral race, don't bother voting. Don't bother voting. Fillmore's in. He's got all the money. He's got all the exposure. The other 2, I don't think, can possibly come up with that kind of exposure. And the other 11 or 12 or whatever they are, they certainly are not going to come up out of pocket for what has been, for the Fillmore machine has spent. I don't know where he gets his money. Of course, we got no party affiliation going on here, do we, Dan?
Well, allegedly, yeah.
Part of the game. Well, as you know, I'm being facetious, yes. I hope. I don't get it. And with the signs, yesterday I too was out. Actually, it was yesterday and Sunday I was out. And driving around here in Cole Harbor, there are signs, and Andy Fillmore's sign is bigger than any of the signs that are on the corner. If you see a good-sized sign, his is right next to it, in front of it, or behind it, and easily read and legible. So I don't get it. What's going on here? How do they? And then the other thing that I'm curious about, you had a person come on here and say that there was a person running for council who did not live in the district.
Yep.
So a person from District 2 can run it for council in District 3.
They can.
Please help me out.
No, they can.
Please help me out.
Stephen Adams did it for many years. He represented Spryfield for a number of years and lived in Bedford.
Tell me how that works.
Well, exactly.
So he has no allegiance to Bedford in that position?
Yeah, I asked him the question many times, and he said that his wife is from Bedford, and that's where they made their family home.
What's that got to do with who he's representing?
Exactly.
I don't care what his wife does.
No, I understand that. I think, and Tony, I agree with you. I think that if you're going to run for council and you're going to represent a district, then you should live in that district. But that's just my opinion.
Well, that's my opinion as well. I don't get it. So if an item comes up that affects Bedford, which way do you vote? If whatever your constituency wants in the district you represent, or the district you live in? Or do you split your vote and say, wifey, I'm going to vote 50% for Bedford and 50% for Spryfield or wherever the hell it was? I don't get it. But they do have a cover because they are also regional counselors. Yep. Mancini told me one day, he schooled me. Mancini schooled me one day. He said, I'm a municipal counselor. Well, what's that mean? Do you travel around the municipality, or do you keep your... No, I don't want to say it. Geez, I almost swear, Dan. Do you keep yourself on the peninsula, or in your constituency and don't know what happens where I live in East Lawrencetown or Muscadabbit Harbor or Three Fingers or whatever the case may be. Oh, I've been there once or twice. Well, that's very nice. That's really nice of you. What'd you do, get lost while you're out? I don't get it, Dan. I don't get
either,
what the
Tony.
municipal issue.
I think it's a fair question. And I think that once this election is done, I think that us as constituents, or we as constituents, should ask a lot of questions of what is happening with the with the election laws, and maybe we can start to affect change on something like that, because I think you're right. I think probably, and maybe I'm being naive about the whole thing, but I'm thinking probably that the people that drew up these rules when we amalgamated municipalities thought that, you wouldn't even think about not living in a district that you wouldn't want to represent. But if it's not in writing, people are going to do it.
Absolutely. One other thing you asked about the debate tonight.
Yeah.
I am not watching. I didn't watch the debate for the presidency. I'm not watching it, certainly. I don't want to say both of them are bozos, but both of them are pretty scarred up. And I think it's going to boil down to what Wall's military background is. And Vance is just, he's a mini-me of Trump. That's all he is. Trump, but Trump can't control him, I don't think. I don't know for sure. But it's... I'm scared. I'll say it. I'm scared that Trump is going to win this election, and the reason being is that his base is far more rabid. His sect is far more rabid than the backing for Kamala Harris.
Yep.
Do I think she'd be a great president? No. Do I think she would be a better president than Trump would be? Absolutely, because I believe in moral dignity, and he doesn't have any. With that, I bid you adieu. Have a great day.
You too, Tony. 902-405-6000. We're going to need to take a break, but there are lots of open lines if you want to get in and join the conversation again. 902-405-6000. The open hour continues. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Back in minutes. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. This is the open hour. The telephone number is 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Lots of open lines if you want to get on and get something off your chest. It's interesting, and this is something that Vanessa and I have sort of anecdotally been keeping track on when we come back from for some a longer weekend this past weekend because of Truth and Reconciliation Day. Everybody seems to be contented because the phones get to be a little bit light on these days after holidays. So if you have something you want to talk about, doesn't have to be the topics I threw out there. It can be whatever is on your mind. Give us a call. The number is 902-405-6000, just like Len did. Len, how are you?
Not too bad, in yourself.
I am well. What's on your mind today?
I just like to say, when you were talking about all these signs that these people that are running for some kind of office, they mean nothing to me. Absolutely nothing. If I was running in an election of any kind, I think the best way to get in touch with the people that you want to vote for you, I would think would be knocking on doors. I know it's not easy to do that, but at least when somebody knocks at my door and I meet the person, in person that's running, it gives me an idea more of who I'm voting for. A sign does absolutely nothing. And as far as Fillmore goes, I don't care how much money he has that he's spending to become mayor of Halifax. I don't want to say that who I'm voting for, but I'm certainly not voting for a person like Fillmore that's got that has all kinds of people giving him money in order for him to get in. And I maybe I'm wrong when I say this, but a lot of people that give a person money, a lot of money to run an election, just tell me if I'm wrong. a lot of these people are looking for favors from that person after he gets elected.
Well,
and that's not good.
Donations, Len, donations have been a thing since there's been politics, and there's nothing against the rules that says you can't generate money, because I will tell you that Mayor Savage did a lot of that, and so did Peter Kelly, and go down the list, right? But I think you're right. I think you're right though, because if I'm Dan businessman and I give you some money, maybe you see my name on a document, and maybe I get at least I get the phone call, right?
Oh, yeah. If you have something that coming up that you need a favor from, you might go and see that person that you gave a lot of money to be elected and ask them to help you out in your endeavor. Anyway, to me, this time in this election that's coming up in a municipal government, I am voting for the small. I'm always for the underdog. Mm-hmm. And to me, I wouldn't mind seeing a woman be mayor of Halifax. I think women are... that, in the world that have become leaders and everything, have become very strong and very good people in running things. And so, to me, I'm voting for a woman that's running for mayor in Halifax this time. And I think it's, in the past, a lot of people have been condemning our councils, the people that run this Halifax. They've been running them down because they haven't done a lot of things that they asked them to do. And so a lot of them are going to lose their jobs in this election. And and they deserve that, because they didn't listen to their constituents. And so all the power to the underdog. And thank you very much, and have a great day.
You too, Len. 902-405-6000. Let's welcome Darren to the program. Darren, how are you?
Hi, how you doing?
Good. What's on your mind?
Good. Well, this gentleman that was just before me, rather than just vote for somebody because they're a woman, why don't you vote for somebody who's, going to do the job? Man, woman, child, whoever it is. It's ridiculous that you're just picking people because they're a woman, or picking people because they're this or that. Vote for the person that's going to do the job and do it correctly. So, that being said, I'm just wondering what the deal is with these folks up in Parliament that have been suspected to be, working with the Chinese government. You don't hear anything about that anymore. Are these people still in Parliament?
As far as I can tell, they are, and those hearings are underway. They started again last week and are continuing this week, I think.
So what you're telling me is you've got, to use an analogy, you've got murderers that, are still left out because we're doing an investigation about them being murderers.
Well, it would be, right? Until the charges are laid.
I understand, but you've got people in positions of power that are suspected of colluding with China, and they're still sitting there, and they're still doing what they're doing.
And we still don't know who they are, right? That's the part that gets me, is that we've never been told who they are.
That gets everybody. That's the part that gets everybody. I don't know what's going on here. We're just being left in the dark. We're a pile of mushrooms.
For sure.
With regard to this, you can't do that. You can't just have people and accuse them of colluding with China, but leave them where they are and let them do the damage until we find out who they are. I don't know who this is. I would like somebody in government, Darren Fisher, whoever, to call in and explain this out, because this to me is just mind-boggling that this can happen, and you can let people that are suspected of colluding with China still be in a position of power. I don't understand it. I understand there's innocent until proven guilty, but remove them from the position. Don't let them do what they're trying to do. If they're suspected of doing it, remove them from the position until they find out whether yes they've done it or no they haven't done it. This is ridiculous. Darren Fisher, if you're listening, or anybody from Parliament, if you're listening, please call in and explain to the public who vote you people in to give you these massive salaries why this is happening. Sorry about the rant here, my friend.
All good, Darren. I appreciate it. I agree with you.
All right, Kat.
All right, man.
You have a good one.
Cheers.
Take care.
902-405-6000, 902-405-6000. It kind of went away, right? There was all of that bluster about politicians and MPs sitting, and some that have retired, and senators and so on and so forth. And then there, Elizabeth May's revelations that there was nobody on the list, and then well, that's not true, and the back and forth, and then it just kind of went away. And that is what government banks on. Governments of all stripes will bank on it. There'll be bluster. They'll sometimes even throw up a trial balloon to see what the reaction's going to be. And if we drop it, It goes away. I'm glad Darren called and brought that back to the forefront because I still think we deserve to know if there are those kind of serious allegations of somebody in power colluding with the Chinese or whomever. Don't you think we need to know? Sean and Dave are on the line. We'll get to you right after the news. You're listening to the Open Hour on the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. This hour, well, this half hour now, is for you. This is the Open Hour. The lines are open. 902-405-6000. Let's go right to the phones and welcome Dave to the program. Dave, thanks for holding.
No problem. How are you doing this morning, Dan?
Good. What's on your mind?
Just wanted to talk about, I think it was your first caller. Is it Rick? I think he's right in some regard. I think Trump will win. I think some of the battleground states are starting to show where he's starting to forge ahead. And even if he's close, he comes on in the end anyways. And maybe Kamala and Waltz are kind of losing their glitter a little bit. And reality check is, are they capable of running the planet in some ways, globally and domestically? And then a lot of people sort of look at Kamala and say, well, the United States is a bit of a mess. People are disgruntled down there in many ways, mostly economy, I think, of course. You have to ask yourself, is she capable? And is Waltz? Trump's been there, and wasn't a bad 4 years, to be honest, until COVID hit.
Which was two of it.
So I think Rick is right. I think he is going to win. But I don't think Rick needs to be scared, right? We don't need to be scared. There's things going on in the planet right now, like you said, away from the election. And the hurricane was one. That was devastating, North Carolina, what have you. Have you seen the hurricane and the damage, Clearwater, if you're familiar with that?
It's crazy. Like, it's absolutely heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it is. It's just amazing. That's nature, unfortunately, and it does happen. We haven't had anything close to a hurricane or maybe one tropical storm there, and as time moves on, we may not get anything. But having said that, you got two wars on the way, and what did I hear? Iran is ready to launch an attack.
Yeah, I just saw that.
So,
yeah.
And we're in deeper now. We're not negotiating, doing anything right over there as far as globally. I think our leaders, Blinken has been over there 9 times, no resolve yet. I think even Biden, if he's still existing, is sending over more troops, U.S. troops into Crete, I think 40,000, and U.S. ships were fired on by the Houthis. So it's all ready to go, and we need change. We need somebody in there that can make change. Well, what do we have to lose at this point? Because it's going to go up in smoke. You got Russia, Ukraine, not even close there, is it? So maybe people should question, Trump is a bit of a arse at times, of course, but he may have some resolve. Because what's going on right now, there is none. Now, can I get back to the Andy Fillmore thing? Because
very quickly, I got lots of calls, Dave.
Yeah, he's in my algorithm. I'm telling you, I'm on YouTube. He's flashing up every time I go on YouTube, and it's amazing. He's well spoken, and there's different sets that he's got. I don't know where he's getting his money, but how he's got me almost convinced. He's smooth, he's slick, he seems to know his stuff, and anyways, very impressive. What he's doing. So, all right, Dan, I'll let you go and get on to some other callers. Cheers.
Cheers. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. As Dave mentioned, that's probably one of the reasons why I think, for me anyway, the U.S. election's fallen way off the radar is all of the things that he talked about. There's just so much other stuff that's going on in the world that for me, that really watches U.S. politics maybe as a sideline. It's right off my radar. It really is right off my radar. But I'm going to get back to the phones and welcome Sean to the program. Sean, how are you?
Hey, Dan, I'm good, thanks. Yeah, I just want to point out something funny I noticed about the signs there, the election signs.
Sure.
You notice that there's no liberal colors on these signs? Like Pam Lovelace, I seen one, was blue and white. Almost looked like a conservative sign. And then Andy Fillmore's is yellow and blue, and Tony Mancini's is like blue, yellow. Like there's no trace of liberals at all.
I think I saw one. I think I saw one in District 11, and I don't remember the candidate's name, but I remember it looking very similar to the liberal signs that we saw during the last federal election.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, you're not seeing like any of these known liberals like Pam Lovelace, Tony Mancini.
Well, I don't know about the Pam Lovelace being a liberal. I think she'll take exception to that.
Okay. Well, would always put her as a liberal.
Okay.
And then, like, the other quick little thing, like when you do the counselor meeting thing on Mondays.
Yes.
How come you don't address, like, when you're introducing them? How come you don't say which party they're representing?
Because they don't represent a party.
No, they don't represent a party. Like,
no, not municipal politicians. There are no parties.
Oh, okay. Because just the way our municipal is run, maybe that's why I think it's that way. Like,
but there is none. There are no parties. No party politics in municipal councils.
Oh, well, thank you for informing me of that. And but the other thing is, Andy Fillmore. I would never vote for anybody. I mean, his record on the Trudeau government, he voted every vote. He voted with Trudeau and his government. So as far as I'm concerned, he's just another arm of Justin Trudeau. Thank you, Dan. Have a good day.
You too, Sean. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Let's welcome Randy to the program. Randy, how are you?
Good, Dan.
What's on your mind?
You had a caller earlier challenged Darren Fisher or any sitting MP to call in and give their opinion on whatever, but they can't call in and answer any questions about anything unless they've been given a script from the PM or a caucus. Mm-hmm. They can't openly talk about and give their opinion without their direction. And if he did, just don't think back to Bill Casey. What would happen to him? He couldn't independently vote no on the carbon tax or yes on any other piece of legislation. Sitting MPs, they don't have a vote. They vote how they're told. They have no independent voting. It's almost like a communist structure when you think about how once a majority government or a minority government that has the backing of another party have the votes in the House, the caucus and the Prime Minister run the show. Darren Fisher, Andy Fillmore, these guys can't vote on nothing unless they're told to. And as far as I'm concerned with Andy Fillmore running in HRM, he voted yes to the carbon tax. He could have stood up just like Bill Casey, so could Darren Fisher. I supported Darren Fisher in my riding. I know Darren Fisher. I will not vote for any person who said yes to that carbon tax.
Randy, I agree. I agree with everything that you said, but I will also suggest that it's not just the Liberals that their MPs are not allowed to speak their mind. That happens on all three parties.
System, Dan. Yes, it's the whole system.
Yes.
If you think about when we elect the people we want to represent, who are they representing when we send them to Ottawa?
Yep.
Once we send a person to Ottawa, they do not represent the common person who said yes or no or scrapped their vote at the polling station. They no longer work for us. They work for the Prime Minister and caucus. We have to start opening our eyes to understand where's the power in this country. It's not with your best friend you send up to Ottawa. If you think that person is going to help us, they're not going to help us. They're going to do exactly what they're told. That's how they work in Ottawa. That's how Canadian politics works when we form a government. And the best case scenario for us is a minority situation because at the very least we have a little more diversity in how they govern the country.
Great call, Randy. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Have a good one. 902-405-6000. It's what I think, and this is my opinion, I think is wrong with federal politics and provincial politics today. Is that exactly what Randy said? Is that when you are elected as a member of a party, you go to either to the legislature in your downtown Halifax or to the House of Commons in Ottawa, and very few instances are you allowed to vote your conscience. In fact, it's a thing when you get to vote your conscience. They'll even announce that you'll be able to vote your conscience. So my suggestion to you is the next time that we have a provincial election, and that could be very soon if you believe all of the rumors that are floating around, or the next federal election, which could also be very soon if you follow what's going on in Ottawa. Keep that in the back of your mind. Because when a person goes to Ottawa, most of the votes are what they say are whipped. And that means there's an actual person called a whip. It's not, they don't have the actual device where they hit people with it. They have a person that's called the whip. And they are responsible to make sure that all of the MPs vote the way that the government wants. And that just doesn't feel like it works for me. And if you don't, chances are you're out, and you'll have to sit as an independent. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Let's welcome Jim to the program. Jim, how are you?
How you doing, Dan?
Oh, this sounds like Jim Hoskins.
Yeah, it is. I just called in because I think it was Mike that was questioning where Andy Fillmore is getting his money. Yeah, I'm no campaigning, but I can tell you this. Listen, as a candidate for mayor, Andy Fillmore and I have wide differences when it comes to a lot of issues, particularly the tents and housing. But I'll say this, at the end of the election, all the candidates have to submit their forms, which include all the donations where they get it. And by the way, it's made public. The big change was after Savage ran for a while and got all that money in the beginning that came from a lot of like associations and developers and what have you, or business people. They cut that out. So we can't take money from associations. We can't take money from developers. But, of course, if they own a big contracting company, if that's what Mike's thinking about, or he's a liberal, they have to do it individually, okay?
And there's a limit, right,
don't
Jim?
worry about that.
And there's a cap, right?
Yeah, there's a cap. Like for mayor, I think it's $30,000. I'm not sure. But listen, Andy might have different views than me and vice versa, but I do not begrudge the man for being a member of parliament, having name recognition when he comes down here. And if he's getting more donations than I am, good luck to him. But it's not deterring me and other candidates, especially me, from out there campaigning hard. We're on a limited budget. Most of us have smaller teams than the councillors and the MPs do. So we rely on the average citizen that we're banging on doors and doing our thing to decide on October the 19th. So I think that has to be made clear to the voters, that don't begrudge Andy Fillmore because he has a lot of donations and stuff and happens to be a member of parliament. If Jim Hoskins was running as a member of parliament, I'll guarantee you I'd have name recognition too. So I just want to make that quite clear.
Jim, I appreciate the call.
Thank you.
902-405-6000. We need to take another break. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. This is the open hour. It continues on the other side. We're back in minutes.
Axe.
Well, as you can tell, there's some work going on behind the scenes here at our station, and that was what all that static was about that you may have heard. So for those of you that email me, thank you very much. As I understand it, our engineering team is doing some work up at our transmitter site, and that was responsible during that break. So again, I apologize for any inconvenience that it may have caused. Let's go back to the phones and welcome Rick to the program. Rick, how are you?
Good, Dan. Hope you are too.
I am.
Look, I'm a, YouTube aficionado.
Okay.
There's so much music and politics and everything else that appears on YouTube with every diverse opinion you could imagine. But what I keep seeing is ads from Andy Fillmore. Excuse me, Dan. And one thing I noticed is Andy Fillmore is claiming all kinds of things that the mayor has no power over. He's going to do this, he's going to do that. He's talking like he's the president or prime minister elect or to be elected. I mean, HRM mayor basically has one job, and that's to chair the meetings, two jobs, chair the meetings and vote in case of a tie. Now, there are other unofficial duties, I know, but what Andy Fillmore is claiming is insane. I don't know how he's getting away with it. And not only that, the ads that I see are different each time. It's not like he has one ad that is being broadcast a lot. He has several different ads that are broadcast a lot, and most of them make claims, and I can't give you the specific examples because I'm just going to shake my head, but if you go on YouTube and you're from this area, YouTube has an algorithm that can tell that you or I are, living in HRM, and they'll show us, Andy Fillmore ads, or they won't show them in another part of the country.
Yep.
The second thing is I would just say that electing Andy Fillmore is like getting Mike Savage all over again. You have a former Liberal MP. He, how should I say it? Was a member of Justin Trudeau's government, and as you mentioned earlier, he voted for all the things that the Liberal Party needs votes for in the House of Parliament. Now, the idea of party members having to vote with the government, if that's who's in power, is an ancient thing. It goes back to the beginnings of parliamentary democracy. And when you sign up for the Liberal Party or the Conservative Party or whatever, you are basically agreeing to that.
And I agree with that, Rick.
They came out with the
Rick, I'll agree with that. But what the part about it that bothers me is that when somebody, particularly at the provincial level and the federal level, is campaigning, they say, I'm going to go to Ottawa or I'm going to go to the legislature and work for you, when they're really not.
No, they're not. No, that's true. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, no, that's again. We have a parliamentary democracy based on Britain. We don't have a constitutional republic like the United States.
Agreed.
Right? And both those forms of government are basically to protect the people from the government. That's why they have the rules in the United States that they do. That's why we have in Canada, for instance, Justin Trudeau could be turfed out by his own caucus. That's the one fail-safe that we have. If a leader of a party goes too far, that his own caucus can basically oust him by having a vote of non-confidence and inviting the other parties to join in. So it's not like 100% power. But anyway, back to Andy Fillmore.
Quickly,
he's lying, in my view. That's all. Okay, let's go.
Have a good one, Rick. 902-405-6000. Let's welcome Dave to the program. David, how are you?
Hey, Dan. I'm great. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure. What's on your mind?
I got two issues: the signs and democracy. There's several. I've been listening to the show since Rick's time, and there's several guys I like. Bill Mont, of course. Some guy called Chris, and who's very good, and Tony. And Tony's comment this morning about the signs in District 7, which is Jubilee South to Point Pleasant Park.
Yep.
The signs are everywhere.
It's
I've
crazy.
never seen in my lifetime so many signs. It's gotten so bad that now there's accusations of vandalism between the candidates, and they're threatening legal action.
It's like I've never seen, and I've been here for 12, 13, 14 years, and through a number of campaigns, and it looks awful. It looks brutal.
Almost as bad as the bike lanes look. Sorry about that. Sorry.
Your second issue, David?
There's no enforcement of the bylaws.
No.
And the signs are on public land. One last thing is it's so bad that you can see someone just called about who's supporting Andy and things like that. Mm-hmm. It's so bad that you can see where what candidates the developers are supporting by look what candidate signs are on the vacant developer land, like Roby and Yonge Street. It's a sad state for democracy.
You know what? To be honest, David, I never even thought about that, but I'll have to take a look. You're probably right.
It's pretty sad, and we know that money's been transferred, and some of the candidates have refused donations, but transferred. So anyway, I got something else on democracy. I'll call you tomorrow.
All right, David, I appreciate it. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. The last word today goes to Alan. Alan, how are you? Alan, are you there? One more time for Alan. Vanessa, we're going to put him on hold, and maybe he'll come back. Anyway, and then everybody hung up, so now we're hung out to dry. Anyway, the election signs. I think that, and I think somebody called here during one of the programs, and the election programs that we have. And by the way, that returns on Monday. Steve Murphy will be back in the chair on Monday, and we will do candidates on the hot seat. That is an opportunity for all candidates that are on the ballot to call in, first come, first serve. They can tell us about what their plans are for their district, and so on and so forth, introduce themselves to us. And we'll do that again on Monday. That's for a full hour starting at 10 o'clock with Steve Murphy. And we will also continue our our candidate profiles if you have not been on already and would like to join me on the program and talk a little bit more one-on-one. Give Vanessa a call. 902-405-6000 is the number, and she will do her very best to set all of that stuff up. As for the election signs, there are rules on the books. They do not get enforced. Period. End of sentence. And I think that needs to be addressed because the signs are easier to get now. They're expensive, but they're still easy to get. Everybody's got them. These sign wars have to end. As I've said from the beginning of the campaign, if you can convince somebody to put a lawn sign on their property, then be my guest. But this putting signs on medians, in parks, parkettes, on street corners, at intersections, has to stop. It absolutely has to stop because it makes our community look just awful. They're distracting. And I'll tell you what, there may be science out there that says it works, but I don't think it does. I don't think you drive by a vote for Dan for mayor and suddenly I'm going to get a vote because you drove by a sign on the side of Dunbrack Street. Thanks to you all who took time out of your day to dial the numbers. We'll do it again tomorrow. Don't forget it's Wednesday tomorrow, so an open hour will move from 11 until 12 to accommodate Dr. John Gillis and house calls. We're going to stop down. Blake's going to update us on what's going on in the news. And when we come back, it's time for Science Files. Dr. Rob Thacker's here to answer your science-related questions. The number, you'll know it now, 902-405-6000. We're back in minutes.
X.
Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. Good afternoon. It's Tuesday afternoon. I'm getting confused. Didn't work yesterday, so this whole 1 day, 2 day thing is anyway. It's Tuesday afternoon, and that always means here on the Todd Veinotte Show that it's time to welcome into the studio for Science Files Dr. Rob Thacker from St. Mary's University. Dr. Rob, how are you?
I'm good. It's a little bit of a tough week at home. Had some leaky pipes that I got to get sorted out. It's one of those, I know, old house, so happens in the end. I mean, you could say it's a little ironic because we're actually saving up to get some work done on our bathroom, and we would have got all of the pipes replaced then, but it got us first. So there we go. That's life.
That's the way it goes. The best laid plans, right?
Yep, indeed.
And you're learning the science of copper piping.
Oh, yeah. No, I was amazed because when the guys came over, eventually we found it. I mean, we did the typical things like a seal on the toilet. No, it wasn't that. Is it the putty on the shower drain? No, it wasn't that. And so we had to cut holes in the ceiling. And then we basically just turned on one of the lines, or emptied actually. It's on a drain. And then there was it drip, 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 drip.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so it's probably been going for quite some time. So I'm actually just happy that we saw it just as we were leaving the house.
Right, because it could have been so much worse.
Yeah, exactly. We could have literally lost the plaster on the ceiling if we hadn't just scored it right there.
So there was no serious damage, I guess, is what we're looking at.
No, we were lucky because it seems to have been going so, but once we cut a piece of the ceiling down, the plasterboard was still okay.
Well, that's the good news part of it.
Yeah, well, I'm still going to have to cut holes so guys can get to the pipes. But anyway, yeah, it is what it is. That's life.
902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. If you have a science-related question, this is your opportunity. Dr. Rob's here for the next 60 minutes to answer all of those questions. Dr. Rob, you and I were having a conversation, I believe it was last week, about different energy sources and nuclear power.
Yep.
And one of the issues, well, there's a number of issues, but one of the issues is what's to do with the stuff that's left over.
Yep.
And I'd mentioned those deep rock
repositories.
I almost said depository, and that's not what it is.
Deep rocks
don't think you want to do that. Anyway, you said that you did a little bit more digging into that and got some pretty cool facts on it.
So let me give listeners a perspective that I have on this as someone who I don't want to pretend that I'm an expert on this. I'm not. I'm interested in it, and I have knowledge around nuclear safety from being a physicist and so on. But there are many people more educated than I in this area. But nonetheless, looking at what we're doing with the storage of this stuff at the moment, we have what's called temporary storage facilities. And while they're all maintained, there are people who are watching these things and so on. I think long term, this is not optimal, right? And so that's one of the reasons why, I mean, you can imagine you have a massive flood. I mean, the big thing that people are concerned about with nuclear waste is transport by water, and water leaks and things like that is something that are really you have to protect against. And so as we talk about the repositories, we can actually talk about this a bit more. So that's the situation where we have stuff that's being stored and managed right now. Obviously, people are trying to be as careful as they can, but it's still a system that has its problems, flood. I mean, even interference, if the wrong actors got involved, that could be a real problem. And so there's been this push for many, many years now, decades, to find solutions that we basically put it down there away in a stable geological configuration. That's actually quite debatable, and geologists have
water tables and
Yep.
aquifers.
So, and I mean, even things like you have to sort of like know what the probability of having another glaciation come along, put like a kilometer of ice on top of the rock, and then produce some kind of earthquake response to that and things like that. So you do have to think about those very detailed things. But at the end of the day, most people who work in the industry strongly favor these carefully developed long-term storage facilities. And so in Canada, we've got this debate going on right now, right? There are two communities, both in Ontario, Ignace and South Bruce. And so they're voting on whether they'll have one of these storage facilities built. Now, here's the incredible thing to me. We've been talking about this for decades, and the first one in the world is really only coming online right now, and that's in Finland, right? So the things that they're going to learn, right, that they're almost sort of like the brave first group out there, because they are undoubtedly going to learn things that's going to help other people. And so one of the ways these systems protect from leaks and things like that is you first put all of the waste in a really strong sealed copper capsule, like really thick copper, right? And those are supposed to be fairly resistant to any kind of breakdown over time. There is a debate over whether there are very long-term things that can happen with copper. It's obviously very hard to do that chemistry, because if something takes a long time, then in a lab you can only look at a very tiny amount of that reaction.
Is there a reason why it's copper?
It's just copper's general reactive situation. Okay. I mean, I think some people have proposed bronze as well, but copper is what they've decided on. And then once you have the copper, then you seal that in bentonite clay, right? And they use bentonite clay because bentonite clay will absorb water like nobody's business, right? So that thing that we were talking about with water, right, being the main concern, that's really what the bentonite is designed to do. So you have this copper sarcophagus with all the material inside it, then you have a bentonite outer layer, and then you've obviously got the repository itself on top of that, which is chosen to hopefully not have any significant leaks. In fact, one of the things in Finland that they remarked on was as they were going down, they had to see where there are any fissures, and if there were, then they had to avoid those and things like that. And so there are multiple levels of safety that are supposed to go into these facilities. But at the end of the day, what people worry about the most is the movement of water, right? Because water is the only thing that's going to bring things up. Even an earthquake isn't necessarily going to bring something to the surface. It could sort of like have a problem down below. But water coming up is the key thing, right? And so there's a lot of evidence that as you go down in depth, right, the water down there is still very brackish, which suggests it hasn't had a chance to mix, and so it hasn't moved. But again, this whole concern about what can happen with water transport really is the main thing that people worry about.
Having lived very close to Ignace, where one of these repositories is being proposed, and you're right, there is a very vigorous debate going on up there about it now, involving provincial governments and the legislators and the First Nations and so on and so forth. The geology of that area it's Canadian Shield granite, and I guess that is that the gold standard, what you're looking for, because of the least amount of potential for these fissures and cracks. And
so there's a couple of takes on this, right? And so in Canada, because we have this huge expanse of the shield, right, we think that we can look at that and find areas that are more stable, right? And so I believe Ignace is one of those supposedly very stable so-called plutonic regions. And then if you look at what they've done in the States, though, they've turned around and said, well, we want something that doesn't have a lot of water penetration, but if it could slump to fill in because of reactions to shifts and so on, that would be good. So they look at salt, right? Because salt will slump. And so we're on the other side, though. We're sort of thinking, like, let's pick the really strong and stable approach with the Canadian Shield. So the honest answer is, I don't know that anyone can really give you a definitive answer of which of those two ways of doing it is better, right? And unfortunately, we're not going to be able to really find out short of a disaster of one kind or another, and hopefully that wouldn't happen anyway. So,
and we'll learn more about the Finnish model too, right?
Yeah, sure. And so that's, again, I mean, the Finnish one, I'm surprised at how much sort of like they had to be concerned about sort of making sure they weren't near fissures and things like that. So clearly that was something that they were very concerned about. But at the end of the day, I want to be clear that I think there is a lot of research that's gone into this, right? Now, is that enough? That's obviously a reasonable question, right? And so certainly in terms of the main issue, though, and that's water movement, there's a lot of thought going into that.
And transportation. I know the debate in Ignace is because that area is serviced by one single-lane highway.
Mm-hmm.
And that has raised some questions about security of this stuff because it's nuclear and there could be problems associated with it. And, we've had issues with Chalk River being in central Ontario and transportation from there has always been a concern. So there's still a lot of work that has to be done on that file.
So it's really amazing because these debates were things that I saw when I was growing up in the UK. And there's a very famous test that was done in the UK of the particular storage containers that they were using at the time to move the nuclear material around in the UK. And they literally crashed an entire train to show that the casket wouldn't leak. And it didn't leak in any serious way, or I think there was a little bit of lost pressure in it. And so that debate was kind of sealed up in a rather spectacular way in the UK because that test was relatively successful at the end of the day. Now, I can see there's going to be opposition to moving this material. Like, we are talking about a lot of material, and it's not going to happen to be all moved in 1 year. They're talking about 40 years of moving this stuff because you've got 9 ice rinks full of it basically around the country that you've got to move. I mean, from New Brunswick to begin with. Right? So that's going to be basically moved by a bunch of different routes because you can move it across the Great Lakes if you're going to Ignace, right? If you're going to South Bruce, then obviously it's going to change. But I can see there being protests about people not wanting nuclear materials moving. Personally, as long as I do like. Having said that, trains have a habit of derailing in Canada a lot. I mean, I'm disturbed by how much trains derail in Canada.
Considering the number of railways or rail lines that we have and the number of times it happens, it's crazy.
No, it's amazing to me. I mean, the thing is in the UK, when you have a derailment in a highly used rail system, you can have massive accidents because of that. But that's one of the reasons why safety in the railway system in the UK is such a high priority. Right, so here I would normally say let's move it by rail. That's going to be safer, but I'm probably really being unfair to all of the people who work for the railway companies. But I have some concerns. Although again, you're not moving these things too fast on rail, and the nuclear caskets usually are very, very strong, right? And they're obviously engineered to survive any kind of accident that you would normally anticipate. And I've seen the UK results that these things really are incredibly strong.
The telephone number is 902-405-6000. Dr. Rob's here right up until the top of the hour. You're listening to Science Files on the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. We're back in minutes. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. He is Dr. Rob Thacker from St. Mary's University, and this is Science Files. If you have a science-related question, give us a call, 902-405-6000, just like John did. John, how are you?
Hey, good guys. How are you guys doing?
Good. What's on your mind today?
Well, I don't know if this is kind of a weird conspiracy thing or right-wing thing or something, but I saw something, a couple of stories on this, that this telescope caught something heading towards Earth or something, and it readjusted itself to head directly towards Earth. And, they're saying, 10 years' time, whatever this is, it's, they're speculating what it could be. Did you hear about that, Dr. Thacker? Or is that
I'm going to be completely honest off the top of my head, John. No, I haven't. I mean, there was sort of, or there was some concerns with Oumuamua, that so-called interstellar asteroid, and there were concerns that was changing its path somewhat. I mean, I think there were a lot of calculations about whether that could have been related to things being released from it or not, but I haven't heard about what you're referring to now.
Yeah, something recent, and like I said, I didn't know if it was just the people that are on that side of things just trying to create a story, but they did say it was caught by a telescope that sounded like it was already out there. I'm not sure if it was the Weber or
So I mean, what we were talking about with the capture of the mini-moon, that's kind of interesting so much as that mini-moon, which is absolutely tiny. It's not like our moon. It's literally like 10 meters across. But once that comes into the sort of like locale of the Earth, it can be caught and then go into an orbit, but it's not stable. And so if you're sort of thinking, oh, is that like something adjusting? Well, it does adjust because it comes into the Earth's influence, stays around for a couple of months, and then it goes off again.
What they were insinuating was this had intelligent life on it that was adjusting itself, its course to make sure it was heading towards Earth. And they were saying,
feel an episode of the X-Files happening here.
I guess I'm on the wrong algorithms there.
Here's my suggestion. Like, whenever you see something like that piques your interest, just do a screen cap so you've got the information.
Okay.
All right, John, I appreciate the call.
Hey, guys. Thanks.
902-405-6000. I think we talked about that mini moon last week, right?
We did, yeah.
It's small enough that the moon's gravity and the Earth's gravity can grab it, and that will turn it. But it's not somebody with a steering wheel and a rudder.
Oh no! I mean, it's so small. I mean, it's so small that you can't even see it with even a big amateur telescope. You really need a several meter telescope to see it. So it's unfortunate because it's a fun story, but it's not that big a deal.
902-405-6000 is the number if you want to have your science question answered like Carl does. Carl, how are you?
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Hey.
Okay, so, so many things. Three things real quick.
Sure.
On the subject of asteroids. So it seems like they found this one asteroid that has so much precious metal on it. It's like in the quadrillions of dollars or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know anything about that. Then there's the nuclear waste.
Yeah.
The nuclear waste, when we were surfing in California, the birthplace of surfing in California is San Onofre. They have one of the biggest dump sites for nuclear waste right at the edge of the ocean in Southern California. All right? And anyone who surfs there knows. I mean, this one year when we were coming in to go surf that spot, they were loading a big. I talked about this before, probably a year ago. They were still. They had the biggest crane I've ever seen in my life. I've seen a lot of cranes in my lifetime. This was like the most massive crane I have ever seen. I don't know how big it was, but it was like crazy huge, and it was lowering this big giant rubber bag of nuclear waste down in the bowels right at the edge of the ocean at San Onofre, and they're not even supposed to be dumping nuclear waste there. I don't know why in the world, with the earthquakes they have and everything, that could be a massive disaster. Then I saw a story where there's all the scientists are saying they discovered that there's enough fuel to power a spacecraft found around on the surface of Mars. I don't know if you heard that story or not, but anyway, I thought you'd just kind of clarify these things for me.
All right. So absolutely, Carl. So M-type asteroids and metallic-type asteroids, and we actually know of a fairly reasonable number of these, right? And so, yes, when you calculate the amount of metal on them, it's really a huge amount, right? And so, but here's the problem, right? How are you going to get that back down to the Earth, right? And that's one of the things that I always like to point out to people, that mining asteroids is really about what happens to humanity when it goes out into the solar systems. It's very, very unlikely that we're ever going to be able to bring materials back and do that in an energy efficient way. It's just not energy efficient to do that. So that is really the key thing to remember in all of these things, that it's really about what we can do when we go out. I'm the only type of thing where you can possibly imagine there being a significant case is for precious metals, platinum, gold, and things like that. And there might be enough value that it makes sense, right? But for something like nickel and iron, we have lots of deposits of that on the Earth. Then in terms of what you were saying about dump sites, I mean, I want to say that really my position on these long-term nuclear storage facilities is that we have to do something about the temporary storage facilities, right? And so having temporary storage facilities, wherever they may be, they have some risks inherent in them that by and large are worse than long-term storage facilities. So I honestly have no idea what you were particularly seeing at the time. I don't know much about the facility. But I will say that in general, the people who work on this stuff have to be careful, although there are some very well-known accidents where people were not careful, right? And people pay the price for that. And the last thing is fuel to power spacecraft on Mars. Honestly, not sure what you're talking about in reference to there. I mean, we can run vehicles on Mars with solar power if we have to, and we've done that for a few of the rovers.
Okay, yeah, they were saying something about I don't know, an extreme amount of methane gas that they didn't know was there, that they could actually power space vehicles.
Okay. So, I mean, that's essentially what Elon Musk has been talking about doing, right? He was saying that we can create methane on Mars and then we can fly the ships back. I mean, there's probably a reasonable argument for that. But the technology in developing all of that and getting to Mars in the first place is still a few years off.
Carl, I appreciate the call.
All right, thanks for your time, guys.
Have a good one. We need to stop down and take a break. Blake is going to update us on what's going on in the news. And when we come back, Science Files continues. 902-405-6000 is the number. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. He's Dr. Rob. We're back in minutes. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. This is Science Files. He's Dr. Rob Thacker from St. Mary's University. Our telephone number is 902-405-6000. If you have a science-related question that you'd like answered, this is your opportunity. Again, 902-405-6000. Dr. Rob is shushing me.
I just thought of something.
He's shushing me.
Hang on. No.
No.
This is kind of fun, actually, and I haven't done this before, but I thought I'd do it. So I have a class at school, and they were listening to the show last week, which took me a bit by surprise. But one of the students in the class, Lucas, he has friends who work at Long & McQuaid, and so I just want to say, shout out to the guys working at Long & McQuaid.
Wow.
Okay.
He's pining for something. He's looking for some, hey, maybe next time they'll show me the good guitars when I walk in there next time.
No, I'm a musical klutz. I mean,
so am I.
The only stuff I've ever bought from Long & McQuaid, although I'm a musical klutz, I do like building loudspeakers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I bought some stuff from Long & McQuaid many years ago to build some loudspeakers.
So there you go.
Yeah.
We have university students listening to this program. I think they're trying to get an in on the professor, right?
Yeah, I think
or
so.
maybe the professor's going to say something, maybe controversial, and then next class they can say, hey, well,
but that's,
Dr. Thacker.
Okay, that's what I said. That as soon as I make any mistakes, they're going to be calling on me.
You said this, but this is in fact
that's not quite true.
Not true.
Yeah.
So there you go. Maybe one of them listening is going to give us a call and call you up. Anyway, 902-405-6000 is the number.
No,
that's a first for me. I never knew that your physics students were listening
No, I
to
didn't.
it.
I was taken completely by surprise. So,
Mike, welcome to the program.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Good. What's on your mind?
Yeah.
Good. I have a bit of a multi-parted question, but I'll make it quick.
Sure.
So, Dr. Rob, I was reading an article about Stevenson 218 and how when it supernovas, it will release so much energy that it will probably create a black hole and new stars and new planets. Mm-hmm. And then I was reading something about how Betelgeuse may actually have already supernovaed, or we may see it in our lifetime.
Maybe.
Is Betelgeuse big enough to do that, to create a black hole and to make new stars and planets?
Before you answer that, can you make sure you clarify that Betelgeuse is not the thing that we're watching in the movies right now?
No. So Betelgeuse is a star in Orion. So So there's been a lot of discussion about Betelgeuse possibly going into a supernovae because it went through a sudden dip in its overall brightness, and that could possibly be related to this. I think the long and the short of it is, after a lot of people have looked at this in detail, there's a moderate probability that Betelgeuse could go supernovae within the time span is like 150,000, 200,000 years is what I often hear. There's debate over that, obviously. But I think the probability that it goes in our lifetime is really low, like very, very, very low. But if it did, oh my goodness, that would be amazing because you'd be able to see it during the day. It would be so bright, right? But yeah, I'm not holding out much hope for that personally. I think it's highly unlikely. But yeah, whenever you have a large enough star go supernova, basically there's a probability if it's over sort of like 10 times the mass of the sun and so on, that you can actually form a black hole at the end of that. You've got to have a neutron star remnant that gets left, and then that neutron star remnant has to be above a certain mass limit, the Oppenheimer-Volkov limit. And then once it's above that limit, then it will collapse into a black hole. Although I will say we have a general idea of how that happens, but the precise specifics of that are actually very complicated.
Okay. Yeah. One other thing. Do black holes move, or are they stationary? Like, will they just go through the solar system or galaxy, like eating things up, or are they just stationary?
Okay, so I mean, one of the things we tried to, I say on the show every now and again, is that black holes don't suck. Like, so.
Well, they don't. They're cool, but they don't.
But there's this. A lot of people who've seen things in the movies think black holes sit there going. And just sucking things up. They're not really doing that. They are attracting things, but it's just gravity. It's exactly the same way if we took the sun and replaced it with a black hole that was the same mass as the sun, we'd carry on going around in the same way. We wouldn't be hoovered up into it. Now, obviously, stuff does fall into the black hole, and so it grows in mass over time. But the same thing can happen to a regular object in terms of growing with mass over time. So I generally sort of say, like, yes, black holes are unusual in terms of like they're essentially being the end point. If you fall into what's called the event horizon, then your long-term destiny is to be crushed out of existence, which is kind of crazy, but that's what black holes do. So, but at the end of the day, they're moving through the galaxy. There are smaller black holes moving through the galaxy much the same way stars do as the whole galaxy moves around. There are possibly some situations of hypervelocity black holes. Those are really very intriguing. You can have interactions with three black holes and one of them gets ejected at a very high speed. And so we have a lot of fun actually trying to calculate the impacts of that in the simulation work that I do. So those things we're fairly certain do happen, and but there aren't very many of those. So overall, I would say don't be too concerned about it. There's a 6 million solar mass black hole in the middle of our galaxy, and it's just kind of sitting there, right? And so you don't have to be too concerned about these things at the end of the day.
Thanks, Mike.
Cool. Thanks. Yeah.
902-405-6000. I have this idea for a T-shirt, and it's a black hole with somebody holding on the edge and saying black holes don't suck. What do you think?
You should monetize it.
Multi-million-dollar idea. Let's welcome Dave to the program. Dave, how are you?
Very good. Thanks for taking my call once again, gentlemen. I'd like to talk to Rob about a lot of anomalies, in my opinion, that are happening in our solar system, and one of which has just entered today or yesterday, I believe, a mini-moon, which I don't think is exactly something we see very often. I will lead to my question, but this is not right-wing conspiracy, and I'm not trying to form conspiracies, but there's been a lot going on. You've got solar flares that we haven't seen in decades that are very severe on the sun, of course, which has created a lot of aurora appearances around in southern hemispheres as well. Something
aurora australis.
Yep, we have a magnetic shift that is currently underway. I think we talked about that a few weeks ago, and you said, it's moving, and quite rapidly, I guess, in the realm of time, from the north to, I guess, heading over towards Russia or something like that at the moment.
Yep.
And with the moon coming in, was that just fluke, or are we just more apt with social media? Science is evolving now where these things are sort of shaping up. We can find these things, discover, or has it just been I won't even mention the eclipse. We talked about that before. That was one of the most unique things I've ever seen.
The eclipse was awesome. So
got a break in the weather, and that was just something I've never seen. It was unbelievable. So having said that, and there's a few other things I can bring up, but those are the main things. And this moon coming in is rather intriguing. It's going to hang around for 2 months, I believe. It's going to slingshot around. So, can you, if you don't mind, I'll just hang on. Just explain, is this just something unusual, coincidental?
Can I start with your big picture question, Dave? Because I think that's actually really interesting. And that's you're saying, like, are we seeing more of these things? Or is the news just giving us more of them, right?
Right.
And I think that's a very, very important thing to be aware of, because we have this with sort of like extreme weather events, right? Now we literally have news services that track extreme weather events, right?
From the moment they're born.
Sure. So this is something that's different from what we had before. And so even when we have a low hurricane season, we still think there's a lot of activity because we're seeing stuff when it happens, right? So this is something to be very aware of. It is a potential bias that if we don't properly account for, is something to make you think things are happening more often when, in fact, if you'd had the same reporting 25 years ago on a peak season, you would have been, oh, my goodness.
Yeah,
right?
well, that's a fair point.
Yeah. So very good, very astute to be aware of that. Very important thing for passing the news, as it were. Neil Postman would be very happy to hear people talking about that. So, but in terms of solar flares, yes, we've had a couple of fairly big ones fairly recently.
No, you can see it here, which is rare.
It's very rare to see it here. Like, I mean, people on the RSC were talking about this really kind of happens once every 20 years or something like that. So that was pretty remarkable to happen.
Correct.
We are at a solar maximum, or coming towards a solar maximum. So people will say that, you know, we do expect to have this kind of activity. I will say that the one sort of like really big X-class we had maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, that happened to go off in a direction away from the Earth. So we didn't see that. So there's a certain probability in terms of where these ejections actually go towards, that if the Earth isn't in the right place, we won't see a really big aurora. But in terms of the mini-moon, we've had one of these things before. I remember this was in the 1990s. I was a graduate student. Kim Innanen at York University was the professor who worked out all of the details of the energetics of these so-called horseshoe orbits. And so that's something that has happened before. I know it's happened before. It is unusual from an energetic perspective. It was quite tricky to figure out precisely how this happens. They get bound and then unbound because of a very subtle thing in the orbits and the motion of the Earth, which is quite tricky to work out. And we wouldn't have been able to do it without a computer, in my opinion. So I wouldn't sort of, I mean, the amazing thing is if you go on Google and you search mini-moon, you get this little animation of a big moon and a small moon now, which is like Google getting on top of everything. But no, it's not that unusual. I suspect this has been happening for a very long time because the more objects we find of this small, tiny size, like 10 meters, is really, really small for an asteroid. For us to find it, right, we'll find more of these things happening over time.
So we're not going into the age of Aquarius, I assume.
Absolutely not. No.
Maybe, let's hope maybe we are. But anyways, so in your opinion, this is just coincidental, because I'm finding it very fascinating what's going on. There seems to be an abundance of things going on that I've never experienced in my lifetime.
I mean,
I haven't been here long enough to worry about, but I mean, it is quite unique.
So in terms of like solar activity versus finding out stuff with asteroids, there's no real causal link that I can think of between those two things that's going to make them happen.
Just
at the same
coincidental,
time.
of course. Yeah.
Right, but I mean, with extreme weather, you may be more likely to find things that link in one way or another. That's a possibility because it's an
and there's
Earth
always a
system.
tug of magnetic pull with all this stuff going on as well, right? From solar flares. I mean, it's throwing out a lot of magnetism.
Yeah, so the challenge with the magnetic pole is we only have a limited amount of information in terms of human history of its movements over time. It's tricky. I mean, you can do estimates from the geological record of the big changes, but I think the smaller changes are much harder to figure out.
Dave, I appreciate your call.
Rob, hey, listen, Rob, I appreciate your opinion. I love listening to you, and you're straightforward on things. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thanks,
You're
Dave.
most welcome.
902-405-6000, a couple lines open. We need to stop down, take our last break on Science Files. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. He's Dr. Rob Thacker. We're back in minutes.
Axe.
Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. This is Science Files. He's Dr. Rob Thacker from St. Mary's University. Dr. Rob, I mentioned my T-shirt idea earlier today about the black holes don't suck. How about a big moon with a little moon with his finger in the side of his face saying $1 million?
So I mentioned monetizing that. So there's a famous Pillars of Creation image that was taken by the Hubble Space Telescope. And I can't remember the guy's name off the top of it. He's a researcher at Arizona State University. And he said, after he took that picture, processed it, and so on, he said, I wish I had a nickel for every T-shirt that was sold with
right?
that. And of course, it's a NASA picture, so it's freely available to anyone
Everybody.
to put it on a T-shirt.
Yeah, anyway, there you go. So
Jeff, someone, I can't remember.
We're working on our sideline careers here. We're going to make T-shirts for a living.
Yeah.
902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Let's welcome Bob to the program. Bob, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Your question for Dr. Rob, please.
Dr. Rob, the astronauts that are stuck on the space station from months ago, if a new craft just went up within the last few days, I believe, why aren't those two astronauts coming back?
Getting on it and coming back right now.
They're probably asking the very same question.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's all because of the crew scheduling, right? So they've actually they've made the particular crew that came up smaller for this run, and so they'll all go back down together, and you have to just have people up there for a certain period of time relative to the scheduling plan and so on. And so that's how it works out. I was a little bit surprised, personally, that they didn't go for what was called the pallet solution of putting them onto the craft that just went down recently. But they feel this is, again, a safer way. It's NASA, so they're always going to go with the safest route. And so that's their plan, yeah.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks, Bob. 902-405-6000 is the number. I would be, and that's just me, because I'm an outside kind of guy, and being cooped up in the space station longer, that would be
That's
tough, right?
Yeah,
But you mentioned before that NASA trains for all eventualities.
Oh yeah.
And that they
as best
train
as
for
they
this.
can,
as best as you can. But still, it had to suck being left up there, even though you thought you were going home.
So as I recall, like someone had a 6-month delay in getting back a few years ago, right? But that was one person rather than two who were on a very high-profile mission, right? So this kind of thing, we joked about they're missing out on going to an Oasis concert, but at the end of the day, this has got to be difficult for them to deal with. And I'm not sure that they'll get any different salary for being up there. That's an interesting question, of course.
Well, do you get overtime? Do you get a per diem?
I'm not
How does
sure
that work?
They do. So,
wow,
that's an interesting question, which I honestly don't know the answer to. But no, I'm fairly certain that the two of them probably aren't very happy about this.
I would imagine, because, not to mention just the psychology of the whole thing. You gear yourself up to get ready to do something, and it's, space travel's doesn't come without its risks, let's say.
Yeah, and I mean, the two of them, I've talked about this before, the two of them are very trained astronauts, but they won't have had the associated crew training that every crew that goes up has for all of the things that they're working on. So they're going to be doing things on the fly. And so that's probably... I wonder if that's actually more interesting, because they're having to learn on the fly rather than being prepared and scheduled already. So, but at the end of the day, this can't be a lot of fun for them.
And it can't be a lot of fun for Boeing, because it's their Starliner.
No, it's a nightmare for Boeing.
Right? Speaking of which, Alexander has a question about the Starliner. Alexander, how are you?
Hi, Dan. Hi, Dr. Thacker.
Hi.
Your question.
I'm along the same subject as your previous caller and who you were just chatting about there, the Boeing Starliner. They spent, what was it, $5 billion on it. Now it's had multiple failures. What do you do with it? Do you try to fix it? Do you just scrap the whole program and just go with Dragon X, or what do you think?
Does Boeing, and just to add to that, Alexander, does Boeing have that call? Because I would imagine that NASA has built the Starliner trips to the station into their schedule, right?
Yeah, they will have. So here's the thing. NASA wants at least two options, right? Because the craft have different capabilities, and so having different craft is valuable at the end of the day. This is a huge black eye, and it's not even $5 billion. It's close to $7 billion, right? So, well, who's counting the billions,
right?
It's
just an extra billion.
Yeah, exactly. So at the end of the day, this is a huge black eye for Boeing, and they are going to want to be able to fix the problems. There's no question about that. I mean, look... There are a lot of very capable engineers who've worked on this project, and you have to give them time to fix things. Up until now, I think most of the test flights were they were reasonably happy with them. But, there's a lot of stuff that has to get fixed, and I'm actually reasonably confident that they'll probably figure most things out fairly soon. But as we've seen, right, when things go wrong and there's human lives involved, you've got to be really careful.
Yeah. But the next two astronauts who were scheduled to go on it after supposedly it's all repaired, my goodness, they're going to be a bit nervous, to say the least, I would think, wouldn't they?
Well, I think they'll be the fact that the actual bringing the craft back was relatively successful. They'll be pretty happy with that. I mean, it was a situation that if there had been an emergency on the ISS, Starliner was still approved for making that flight and bringing those two astronauts home if they had to, right? But it was them being very careful, and you don't want to have the maiden flight to the ISS for the crewed Starliner turn around and be a disaster, right? So you can understand why they were careful.
Thanks, Alexander. Appreciate your call. And that's going to do it, everybody. I appreciate you for taking time out of your day to dial the numbers and join the show. You make my day each and every day you do it. Thank you to Dr. Rob Thacker for coming in here and having his students do homework while listening to the program. That's a good thing. Thank you to Vanessa Vadinez on the other side of the glass, who is always doing a fantastic job as always here on the program. Now, don't forget, tomorrow is Wednesday. It's not Tuesday. It's Wednesday. We're going to have a conversation with the Dartmouth Hospital Foundation CEO. They've got a big shot in the arm over there for a new cafeteria, so we'll talk to Stephen Harding about that. We're also going to continue our profiles of council candidates, and we will welcome into the studio the candidate for District 9, Halifax West Armdale. Laura Cusson will join us. Don't forget, 11 o'clock tomorrow, we throw open those telephone lines and welcome Dr. John Gillis in for house calls. So get those medical-related questions ready. Dr. John will be here for a full 60 minutes to answer those questions. And at noon tomorrow, as always here on the Todd Veinotte Show, we'll open up the telephone lines for you for an open hour. Have yourselves a fantastic day. Enjoy the sunshine. And remember, be kind to one another.